It was Pathobion.
Pathobion, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh.
And then the one on the right is when we were out. We did a boat trip out in the outside of Rias, Baixas, and so it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So I'll do another quick introduction. So as Stephanie said, my name is Rick Fisher. I work with the Wine Scholar Guild. I am the creator and the education director for the Spanish Wine Scholar program. And so I'm going to pass it off to Kat to do another quick intro for her. And then we're going to take you guys through about a 3-hour presentation. And then, okay, good. At least I got people's attention.
Wait, hold on. I don't have enough wine for 3 hours.
That's because you have to be double fisting it.
Yeah.
I got to go back to the fridge. Hold on.
Yeah.
No, we've got a short presentation that we want to take you guys through. For those of you who aren't familiar with the region or want a little refresher, we're going to talk about some stuff there, and then we're going to share some tastings and, you know, kind of go round robin with that. So Kat, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I'll go ahead and take the presentation from there.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here today. For anybody that has not met me before, I'm super quiet, very reserved. And for anybody that does know me, bold-faced lie. So I work for Hakkasan Group. I'm actually very fortunate to be on furlough. I consider that fortunate still. And even more fortunate to be invited to be with you all today, to be manhandling, woman handling, however, handling 2 bottles of really badass Albarino. I really love the region. I love Albarino. I love the way that it can express itself just like humans can. I do wine training and buying for the United States when we are functioning and up and running. And I get to travel around the planet and kind of talk about different areas of the world. Today, hopefully learning from all of you about what's inside your glass as well. So.
Cool. Thanks, Kat. Hey, I saw a post on Facebook this morning. Some of you may have seen it, and it basically said, if you have 2 wine glasses in your hand, you can't touch your face.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I thought that was very appropriate for our current situation. All right, so let's take a little trip. This, as you all know, is Spain. This is actually one of the maps from our Spanish Wine Scholar program. And you can see, let me see if I get the mouse here. Oops, not yet. So for those of you who aren't as familiar, so Spain here, we've got up here in the northwestern corner in Galicia, you've got 5 main DO wine regions here. Rias Baixas here is actually Spain's westernmost wine region. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but you can see, you know, you've got the influence from the Atlantic over here. You've also got the Bay of Biscay in the north. And these top 4 regions here along the northern part of Spain are referred to as Green Spain. And a lot of that has to do, I mean, predominantly with the fact that there's so much rainfall up in this area. And as you go through, it's mountainous and it's beautiful and it's green and it's lush and it's absolutely incredible. And then you've also got along here, you've got a mountain range called the Cordillera Cantábrica, which also does help influence a lot of the regions here. Not so much Rias Baixas because it doesn't extend that far out. You do have a mountain range over here called the Galician Massif. But for the most part, that main mountain range affects much of Green Spain and Castile and Leon. All right, a little bit deeper look here at Galicia. So as I said, there are 5 wine regions in Galicia. You can see them all listed here. You've got Rias Baixas along the coast, Monterrey in the south, Ribera Sacra, which is a fairly massive region here towards the eastern part of Galicia, Ribeiro, which neighbors Rias Baixas, and then you've got Valdeorras over here. And for the most part, you know, you're looking at heavily maritime climates over here on this side, And then as you move closer to Castilla y León, you do get more continental influences, a little bit less rainfall, a little bit more continental influence. And grape-wise, these three regions here tend to focus heavily on Mencia and Godello, but they do use a lot of international indigenous grapes outside of that as well. And when you're over here on the side, on the western side, you've got Ribeiro, which does use actually a fair amount of Albarino, but their main grape is Treixadura. Most of their stuff is blends. And then you've got our big daddy here of Galicia, Baixas, with Albarino. They are the big daddy, Steph, or big mommy, whatever you want to call them. All right, so just a couple of notes here about the region. As we said, it's located in green Spain, and you could see as we were looking at the map here, these little nooks and crannies as they go through. They're called Rias, R-I-A-S, which obviously is where the region gets its name from, and they're basically like these submerged river valleys that are nestled throughout the coast. Maritime climate with fairly high amounts of rainfall. Some region closer to the coast can reach upwards of 60 plus inches of rain a year. Predominantly granitic soils in this region, and it's fascinating. I think we might have a picture in here, but for those of you who have seen pictures of the region and have been there, you look at these pergolas that they grow the grapes on. It is amazing that they're using these granite pillars to hold these things up. People here pay top dollar to put it on a countertop, and they're just they've got them stuck in the ground to hold up grapes. Vineyards here planted from the coast around 330 feet up towards close to 1,000 feet, and the DO is a fairly young DO. I mean, it's just a little over 30 years old. And originally, when they were created the DO, which was back in 1980, they actually were. Let me see. I've got it. The La Denominación Específica Albarino was the name of the region, and because the EU in '86, when they joined the EU, Spain joined the EU. '88, they went to change to become an official wine region. They couldn't have the name of a region. The name of a grape be the name of the region. Now, there is one exception for that in Spain, and that is Cariñena. And I suspect that is probably because it was an established wine region well before the EU, the entrance into the EU. All right, 5 subzones here in Rias Baixas, and we're just kind of work from north to south. You can see the top here, Ribera de Ulla. This is the smallest region. It's one of the smallest regions. It's by far the newest, and there are some really nice red wines that are produced in this subzone. Then you've got the Val do Salnés. This is along the coast here, and you can see. And even given the size of it compared to some of the others, you see it's fairly comparable to Condado de Tella and a little bit bigger than Orosal. But this is massive production here. More than 60% of the production in the DO comes from this one subzone. It is the oldest subzone, and it's also the home of Albarino. As you move further south here, you've got the smallest subzone, Sotomayor. This particular subzone is the only subzone within Rias Baixas that only produces wines from Albarino. They do not blend with any other grape, even though it's allowed. And the vast majority of production coming out of there is 100% anyways. But Sotomayor does not do any additional, use any other grapes. Then you move a little further south along the inland coast here. You've got Condado de Tella. This is the second largest subzone behind Val do Salnés, and it is also the most continental. So it's warmer and drier. And I think, Kat, you have a wine from Condado de Tella today, right? Yeah. And then finally, you move along the Portuguese border towards the and this actually covers about 14% of the production. Condado de Tella has about 20% of the production. So you can see from Val do Salnés, Condado de Tella, and Orosal, you've got these massive, it is off to you.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't start any of my seminars off with a toast. So, to all of you beautiful humans here, a
Cheers.
high toast to you all. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Salud. All right. Woo! Love the acid on that one. All right. So there are a lot of fun sounding grapes that you'll find in such a small, beautiful, compact little region. I kind of think about myself because I'm called the tiny giant by some really fabulous humans. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but with all of that being said, 99% of all the wine in Rias Baixas is actually white. And most of that, actually 97% of that, is from the Averino grape. Other permitted white varieties being Treixadora, Lorero, Caño Blanco, Torrontés, not to be mistaken with the other Torrontés, Alexandria, which is found over in Chile and Argentina, and Godello. And then our red varieties are Caña Tinto, Espadero, Lorera Tinta, Suson, Mentilla, Pedral, and Bronqueal. And I'm sure that you'll hear them pronounced a few different ways, especially if you jump over the Minho River into Portugal. They are pronounced slightly different, but they are very similar, if not the same grapes. They might taste a little different or made in a different style there. Now, there's a few things that might be a little contradictory in rules and such. Now, especially this is kind of fun with one of the wines that I picked today, and I did this for a few different reasons on purpose, but I'll get to that during the tastings. So the rules state that all wines labeled Rias Baixas, so the whole region of Rias Baixas in Galicia, if it states that on the label, they have to be at least 70% Averino, and the rest of it can be made up of that Caña Blanco, Treixador, Torrontés, Lorero, and the Godello. So I have a wine here that in 2018 supposedly had 60% of Averino and the rest 40% of Treixadora. I'm not going to yell at anybody. I'm not going to tell on anybody because it tastes delicious. So we're just going to kind of go with that. Maybe Rick can kind of chime in a little later when we talk about that. But that's the rule that they kind of state. What we'll see mainly, of course, is Albarino in the area. Treixadora, we're going to find in that subzone of Condado de Teia. And Condado de Teia is found inland. It's a little warmer in that area. Treixadora is really cultivated and added into that very kind of zingy, acidic, lean Albarino to kind of add some flesh, some lemony, kind of creamy zest to it. Where if you're, say, in the O Rosal, which is really on the coast, kind of high terraced areas, that's going to also kind of embrace and kind of make itself a nice little hug around the Averino with the Lorero. Godello is often confused, I'll say, maybe in a blind taste for people getting into this area. Mimics a little bit of a Chablisian style. And Caña Blanco can definitely mimic a little bit of the Averino itself. Rick mentioned that there is some fabulous and amazing red wines coming out of the area. Being that we were able to taste some of them because we were there, I can agree to that and attest to it. We do not get to see many, or if any, of these red grapes coming into the States. So if you do have a chance, snatch them up. It doesn't matter if you fall in love with them or not. It's the chance to taste a grape that has a 1% chance of even making it into the bottle, right? So it's a really fun experience. Mentilla is probably the one grape that makes a name for itself, but you'll find that actually going more east and going outside of the Rias Baixas area.
Hey, Kat, let me ask a quick question. You know, as Kat was talking about the grapes, I'm curious, how many of you guys have ever had a red from Rias Baixas?
I have a couple times.
Okay, cool. What'd you think?
Loved it. I mean, acid up the wazoo, which is my thing. So.
Exactly. Exactly. I think they're fascinating. And, I love that this region, does Albarino so well. But it's these little hidden treasures when you start looking around and when you find them. Like Kat said, snatch them up, because they are bound to be a fascinating and interesting experience when you're tasting. So I was just curious, Kat.
I'll use that verbiage next year at Tiwa. Yeah.
I'm gonna trademark it first.
Plazo. Yes. And another, a kind of interesting thing that I love, and it's definitely indicative of the soil structure and the grapes themselves, but the alcohol levels are always so low. It's hard to get the alcohol levels high here anyway with the climate and such and the grapes, but just the starting alcohol for an Albarino here is like 11.3%. And that's kind of, and red wines at 10%. To get their wines at 10% is like a chore and a challenge, which of course, most of us on here probably are like, woohoo. So I just think that's kind of a fun little thing too. So sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kat. Cheers.
Oh yeah, this is me too. Sorry. Okay, let me just go to the next. So viticultural practices, yes. If you've never seen a spectacle as such, it is awe-inspiring. Now, I am a tiny giant, meaning I am under 5 foot. I'm not going to give you the exact measurements, but I can stand well under these pergolas. So these beautiful granite posts are holding up all of these other granite posts that have these trellised, beautiful canopies of vines just covering them and giving shade and offering this wonderful, beautiful hat that cover the grounds. And I can stand there and kind of look up and be mesmerized and be covered. Now I have to stand on things and reach up in order to do any harvesting, where some taller humans can just reach up and snip, snip, snip. But what this does, there's a few different purposes for this. It allows shading, natural shading from that beating sun when that happens. It allows a function for other agriculture to actually grow underneath. So in the midst of growing things on top, like a rooftop garden, you actually are able to utilize all of that beautiful earth and space underneath as well to grow different agriculture. So multi-purpose in that sense. And since we are coastal climate, for the most part, you've got a lot of humidity. So if you're ever kind of in a desert situation, which being in Las Vegas, I typically am, I go to say somewhere like Texas and my hair goes ding because of all the humidity. I like to stay cool, wear loose clothing, kind of let the air flow through me. And this is exactly what these grapes and vines need to have happen. So a pergola sort of formation allows a lot more wind flow and a lot more of that sunshine to flow through at an even balanced pace, allowing a natural kind of sunshine and sort of sun lotion sort of effect to come through. Now that's great when you have a flat and sort of low hilly area. That's where you'd find that, say, in the Valdesanas, in some parts of the Sotomayor, but where you've got more of those steep sort of areas, particularly we'll look at the Obrosal, some inland parts of the Condado Dotea, and definitely in the Ribera de Ulla, where the Romans created all of these stepped up sort of arched areas where they created these vines and natural pathways. It's really hard to have these granite sort of pergolas, so they created the trellising of the VSP. So vertical shoot positioning, as non-traditional as this may seem, this is now a newer way and a definite easier way, but it's a more sustainable way for these vines on these terraced and hillier slopes to manage and to make the best use of not only erosion and terrain, but the force of the sun and the slope and the action that they're on. winemaking techniques and trends. So I've had the fun and fortune of being on a few of these seminars with Gregory and Vine and tasting some older of the Albareños. And I'm fascinated every time I taste them. And Rick and I actually got to try something that was well over 10 years old. And it was delicious. I don't want to kind of name any names if we're not supposed to. I'm not sure how we're supposed to do that, but we tasted something that was outstanding. It was 03, correct?
Yeah, it was an 03. You can name the name. It's they're a big producer in the region. Paso de Señorans.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to shout out or wait or, you know, but Paso de Señorans, like, just badass. Like, it was amazing. And how badass that was is doing what a lot of winemakers do when they want something to kind of develop, become a little more rich and textured, and preserve themselves by batonnage or lees stirring. So I have a wine also today that I picked that has a bit of age on it, that went through 3 years of aging on the lees. And winemakers now, again, non-traditional for this specific style of winemaking that has been ages and ages. Now, maybe they did this when they first started making wine without knowing it, but for the most part, Albarino has been known to be this fresh, zingy, zesty, fun, crisp, drink it right out when it's made kind of wine. And now people are starting to experiment and let their wine sit on the lees, maybe stir it, maybe just let it sit on lees, maybe kind of play around with a little bit of oak fermentation, maybe let it sit with some malolactic fermentation. And they're finding that there is such a difference. Is it going to be that they're trying to make it like a Chablis? No, maybe somebody is. Maybe somebody out there, the one producer, I mean, there's not many people out of the total 500 and some that are making wine there. But for the most part, I think it's just adding to the style of Albarino. And that's my little humblest opinion. It's just creating a new kind of fun differentiation of what Albarino is and creating a different complexity of that grape. So, and then what the heck does Albarino taste like?
Sorry.
That's fine.
I'm trying to answer somebody in the chat and I was hitting the wrong button.
So these are just a few of the different profiles that come to mind. I actually like to add in. So when I'm going through this, especially with, for me, studying with, say, the quartermaster sommeliers or WSET, I come up with a lot of different other things that kind of come to mind. Salinity is a big marker for me. Whenever I taste salinity, of course, that immediately I come to Albarino, I come to Chardonnay from France and Chablis, and then I kind of start honing in on different structural things. But salinity is a big thing. Stone fruits, like you see the nectarine, sometimes peach and apricot, citrus notes come through, definitely florals, some orange and tangerines, some herbal notes come through. And really whatever I think in that vintage as well. I mean, in 2017, it was a short, crazy, frantic vintage, right? And it ended a little bit warm. So there's maybe a little more of those riper tangerine kind of fruit notes, where in 16 it was a little less of that. You might get more zingy, grapefruity, kind of citrus, stone fruit, less ripe notes, and maybe a little more herbal kind of composition. But structurally standardized, I think there's great acidity. That's always something that I get with Albarino. I get a lot of honeysuckle, citrus, those stone fruits, moderate alcohol. And again, for me, salinity kind of brings all of that through to the back palate.
Yep. Cool. All right. Thanks, Kat. Now you can drink. Now you can quench your palate. So we're gonna jump into tasting here in just a minute. And definitely want to hear from you guys, but just a couple of last minute little things here. So just a couple of fun facts I think about the region, and really fascinating. More than half of the winemakers in this region are women. In fact, it was a woman who started the DO, and she was the president for 20 years. So, I'm always fascinated when, I'm seeing, and maybe it's because we're a little bit more attentive to that nowadays, but it's fun for me to taste wines that are made by women and then taste wines that are made by men, because I definitely get a difference in style. I tend to feel there's more elegance in a lot of these ways. So, but Santiago de Compostela, for those of you who have been to Galicia, which is the capital of Galicia. It is the last step on the Camino de Santiago. It is absolutely a spectacular place to visit, and if you get anywhere near Galicia, you have to visit there. And then finally, so Galicia is really renowned for its seafood. And, we talk a lot about white wine and seafood, and there are very few wines that are a better pairing with seafood than Albarino. The freshness, the acidity, the saline notes that Kat was just talking about that always tend to carry through on the finish are just absolutely perfect. And so what I included in this presentation, and hopefully it'll work, you can see on the right of your screen, you see this picture here of, it's actually, let's see if it works now. There it is. So these women called mariscadores, what they do is they go out, I think it's almost every single day, and they go out and they dig for seafood, for clams, for the razor clams, and then they fill up their buckets and they go, and we got to see this. They go to this little auction place where they weigh everything, and they get paid by the container, and it's absolutely fascinating. So we have the canned seafood in Galicia is really truly some of the best in the world. And so if you ever are in a place and you can find some, I highly recommend picking some up, because it's, again, perfect with these wines. All right, so we are going to do little round robin tasting here. This actually was a little stop that we did at a tiny little indiscreet producer called Martin Kodak's. And this is actually a sparkling Albarino. And for those of you who have not had one, if you find one, I will say they are very rare in the US. They are fun. And, of course, the company that you're drinking it with is a big part of that. And the scenery that we were sitting at top of the winery, again, with another female winemaker, is awesome. So Kat and I actually each have 2 wines today, and we're just going to go through real quick and share with you guys what we're drinking. And I suspect that a number of you are probably drinking the same ones that Kat and I are. So we're going to alternate. I'm going to let Kat start, and then we'll pop through, and then I'm going to kill the presentation because I can only see like 6 of you on the screen, and I want to see everybody. So I'm going to kill the presentation as soon as we get done with this slide here, and then it'll open it up, and we'll let you guys jabber on about how amazing your wines are. Okay, Kat, go ahead.
Okay. So my first wine, as you can see on the screen, but I'll hold it up because it's fun, is 2017. So this is from Pazo Pondal, the Minha Vida. So 2017, as I was saying, in Rias, Baixas, really low yields that year. So, I mean, they don't have a lot of high yields as it is. So low yielding, but really great quality. And Condado do Teia, again, more inland, so it's a lot warmer of an area as it is. And where this has a blend of Albarino and the Trechadora, So where Trechadora is going to bring a little more richness, a lot more of that lemony kind of juiciness and texture. I always get a little more smokiness and almost, it's kind of like this herbal kind of foresty kind of quality. And maybe it's because my head takes me back to climbing through the pines and the forest trees while we were there, which is amazing. I mean, you go from one sort of coastal area and then you're walking through a forest. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's awesome. But what, again, this sort of culminates into is Albarino. So you've got this acid structure that starts to draw the palate and all these flavors back. And then you have this wonderful Trechadora that all of a sudden starts to sort of envelope and wrap the tongue. And you've got that sort of lemon cream that sort of traps everything and draws it back all the way through on the tongue. So in addition now to salinity, to your citrus, and I get a little, of course, now riper stone fruits as opposed to more tart that I would get from, say, the Valdesanas or Obrasal. I get more of that yellow peach and nectarine. I get that kind of like enveloping the tongue as opposed to just searing straight back through the palate. And it's really juicy. It still lingers, and it still makes the mouth water for more.
Cool. Thanks, Kat. All right, so I am drinking, my first wine is the Gran Bazan Etiqueta Ambar. And all right, way to go, Court. And this is a 2018. So 2018 was a pretty warm, it was a pretty dry year for in Rias Baixas. But this is 100% Albarino from the Salines Valley. And again, these are both of the wines that I got to try today. Both are the bodega's oldest vineyards, and this one in particular, they are grown on pergola in the pergola vine training method in granite, and they do use organic treatment for all of their wines and all their vines as well. In this particular wine, they destemmed and then gravity fed to get the free run, and it sat in stainless steel tanks for about 5 months. And so this particular, I mean, this is a really great fresh example of Albarino. It's very aromatic. It does have those stone fruit notes that Kat was talking about. It's like it's got some like white peach, some flowers, and then really kind of racy acidity, which I personally love. And especially at 2:30 in the afternoon in San Diego. But again, it's never too early for a glass of Albarino, right, Steph? And so it just has a really nice long finish. It's got some nice citrus notes on the palate. And it does have a lot of those saline as you finish off. So we got a chance to visit this particular producer, and the winemaker is a nut. He was a lot of fun to hang out with. So, Kat, off to you for Fefiñanes.
All right. So Fefiñanes, another iconic producer and delicious. I went with the 2014 because Rick took the 2012, but I'm really, really excited that I got this one because it is amazing. It's delicious. This is labeled by Rias Baixas, and it is 100% Albarino. This is done in stainless, but I do think that I had a few conflicting stories here and there. So I'm wondering, since it is aged on lees for 3 years, hence the El Año, it's 3 años. It's aged on lees for 3 years before they release that. I'm wondering if they have that in any time in used barrel, but it is in stainless steel for fermentation purposes, and it's quite fabulous. Now, 2014 was really rainy in the area, and this led to a lot of botrytis. Now, we don't really talk about botrytis in a lot of areas other than, you know, of course, our dessert wine areas. But botrytis doesn't necessarily have to be the downfall of things. It can add some enhanced flavors if the rot doesn't ruin the grapes. I'm not really seeing botrytis on these. I just wanted to add in that that was kind of a comment that I found in a lot of the articles about the vintage. I tried it in a few different glass styles, and I decided to go with more of a Burgundy style. I started with, of course, the all-purpose white wine, and when I put it into the Burgundy, I went back and forth a few times, and I just noticed that the fruit really just popped out after I put it back into the Burgundy and came back. But this is where that lees texture. If you guys can get your hands on just a slightly older, you don't even need to go back to a 14. I mean, that's 6 years of age. I almost just said 3. My goodness, we're in 2020. But if you can get your hands on something just slightly older, just to see if it's got some lees aging on it, just where this can go. I mean, you see a Muscadet that has all that acidity, that's more of a even neutral grape, and what that can do to that grape with food and how you can drink that with things. Imagine what your grape, the Albarino, can do, and I'll kind of shut my mouth and leave it at that.
Hey, Kat, Jeffrey wanted to know if it does have like those yeasty, biscuity kind of aromas and textures because of the 3 years of lees aging.
Not at this point for this wine. And I figured once we got to yours, because every wine that I've tried for the Paco at that vintage has already started maturing into that. It's kind of like at that, and I shouldn't use this analogy in this state of being that we're in, but it's at that top of the curve. And it seems like it's about to drop down and start maturing into that. But it's definitely getting there. It seems like it's about to start maturing to the next level. And it's not at a point where it's lost any of its vivacious sort of acidity. It hasn't lost any of that fruit connection, but it's definitely still, it's got some texture and body to it, but it's not mealy or anything on the palate, but it's not at that level yet where I've tasted in the Paco y Lola yet.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, Jeffrey, just to kind of follow up with that, because I have the 12 Paco y Lola, but it has a lot less lees aging than the Fefeñanes does. I think that one of the things that we noticed when we tried the Paso de Señorans, their Selección, the one that has minimum 30 months of lees aging on it, the one that we had, the 3 over there, and I've had the 9 and the 10. Albarino responds really well to lees aging, and it doesn't take on those heavy, yeasty, bready notes like Chardonnay does. And so that's one of the things that I really like about this, is that these wines, even with lees aging, tend to keep their freshness and their acidity. They don't get real weighty and heavy on the palate. So, to that, I'm drinking, my second wine is a 2012 Paco y Lola vintage Albarino. And this one, now somebody said they had a polka dot bottle with a polka dot glass. You are drinking, yep, there we are. That's the Paco y Lola as well. And this one here, interestingly enough, this is another 100% Albarino from the Salmes Valley. And they use free run juice from their oldest vineyards. Now, this one, they aged on the fine lees for a year with a weekly batonnage, which I think is really interesting. And then it sits in a stainless steel tank for another 4 years before it's bottled. And here, even with that, I mean, I definitely get a difference in the texture between the Gran Basan and the Paco y Lola, but it's not heavy. It does have a little bit more of an oily texture to it. It's a little more herbal, a little more spicy, but it still carries through some of those fresh notes and some citrus and whatnot. So really absolutely fascinating, range of wines that we got a chance to try. And we'll real quick, we're going to jump into tasting here, but a shameless plug for hashtag Rias Baixas Wines, and then for the Instagram at Rias Baixas Wines and at Gregory Vine. And so I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to get a chance to see everybody now. Oh, that's so much better. Hi, everybody. All right, so let's go ahead and just do a little kind of fun little round robin, little tasting.
Yeah. Quick
I'm
question
curious.
first.
Okay, yeah, Steph, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw this like appear in the chat a couple times. Why the Riesling type bottle? Like you see the Pfeffignanus, it's more of the Riesling style, and we also have the Grand Bazan.
The Grand Bazan.
And then there's also Mar de Frades that has more of that Riesling bottle. I heard this from the Mar de Frades team, but I think it changes depending on the producer. Maybe it's also just stylistic. But the Mar de Frades team, the woman there, the winemaker there is a woman, and she chose to have a Riesling type bottle, and it's this beautiful bright blue bottle if you ever see it. So the winemaker, she decided to have a Riesling style bottle because she thought it'd be easier for. She was thinking about the female consumer, which we tend to have smaller hands, especially if you're like Kat and I, who are like below 5 feet. So it makes it easier to hold. But yeah, I'm not sure about Grand Bazan or Pfeffignanus.
I do think to see some of the wines that are aged tend to be more in the Burgundy style bottle. And I don't know, I think, Steph, you're probably right where it is probably a little bit more stylistic. I mean, I think these are really cool bottles, and I think they work really well for, I mean, think of, Alsatian wines that tend to be drunk young. Maybe it's almost a way to say, hey, drink this one now and hold on to this one, I don't know. Could be.
They're terrible for wine suitcases. They're terrible for your refrigerator. They don't fit anything. I'll shut up.
But the wine inside is good, right, Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Okay, but that's the
Tell
whole
us really
point,
how you
Jeff.
feel, Jeff.
Okay, but that's the point, Jeff. They don't fit in your wine cellar. They don't fit anywhere. So you just have to drink
them.
Well, let's do anybody. I'm sorry, Kat, go ahead.
The old idea that the Albarino grape originated from the Rhine, and these Rhine-shaped bottles also are indicative of that. I know when we were at Grand Bazan, that question did arise. The response was something that I cannot recreate because it is more foul than even my Jersey mouth will say. But it is now definitely more of a preference.
Yay, Jersey! Woo!
Thank you, Lori. There is something.
I live there now.
But it does definitely make a stand. So you look at the Mina Vita, and I'm sure you all have a bottle of some sort in your possession at this point. Why change the bottle shape? But looking at something that may have a grape in there that needs a little more of this, as opposed to a clean, crisp, pure Albarino, or something like Malone or Riesling that just kind of can float and be proper and just kind of sit in a bottle like such. But the winemaker at Grand Bazan basically did say it was very much a marketing. It looked pretty, and people were more readily able to look at that and grab it because they were used to buying Riesling in that area.
It's interesting.
Do people that look at that bottle and think sweetness though too? Sometimes, with the Riesling,
that was something, like I said, we initiated the conversation. It did kind of get him fired up. So I don't know that he was that happy with the fact that people think that all wines are going to be sweet. But the comments and the questions were risen. But, anytime conversation about certain things like that, and traditions are as they are. you know, it kind of can go one way or the other. So.
And you know, it'd be easy if they put the scale of sweetness on the back so people would know it would be dry.
Yeah, that's a good
I
point. Debbie.
suppose. It's interesting though. There's no real regional identity for bottle shape because you have Burgundy bottles, you have Bordeaux bottle, and Martin Kodak's comes in a Bordeaux bottle. I think from them.
Yeah, I think they're Bourgognes because in a Bordeaux bottle. And yeah, I mean, you're right. And I think unlike, very few wines, legislate the shape of the bottle, like Alsace.
Right.
So I want to hear what you guys are drinking. So if you want to share what you're drinking, how about you raise your glass up and we'll, just in case. All right, Debbie, go for it, girl.
First, all right, so I had to take my little ice pack off. My little ice pack was on it. I've got the Paca Loco 2018, and I love this wine. This, I've had Albarinos from other areas of Rias Baixas, and this one I think has just got such a great expression of where it comes from, with the bright acidity and the minerality. And the minute I opened it, I just smelt the ocean. And it's becoming one of my favorite Albarinos. It's just, I think in the course of Albarinos from the different regions, I think I'm more favorable to the ones that are oceanside than the ones that are more inland, because there definitely is a terroir difference.
Absolutely.
In that and what that particular wine expresses.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yep. Who's next?
Okay, I'll go.
All right, Brianne.
Yep.
Hi there. I'm drinking the Serra da Estrela Alvarinho. It is from the subzone of Rosal. It's totally, typically, classically Alvarinho. I love it. It's fresh, crisp, refreshing, and I'm a huge Alvarinho fan. I always offer it as, if you like Sauv Blanc, try this kind of thing, because Sauv Blanc, love Sauv Blanc. It doesn't need any help right now selling. Smaller regions or lesser known grapes get some sales, and like for the same price as, this is a $16 retail according to that I have here, and there are some big Sauv Blanc brands at that price point, and so I'm very happy to.
Yep. Yeah. Said hounds in our house, and my wife is a big Sauvignon Blanc fan and a big Albarino fan, kind of as this is great. This one is the Nora de Neve. I'm terrible with Spanish pronunciations. This was fermented and aged in French oak barrels, so it's quite different from what I'm used to for Albarino. 5 months on the lees as well. I'm in the sparkling unit for diploma right now. I'm just reading about that. The reason I was asking about that, when you spend enough time on the lees, you get the biscuit, right? Before that, there's the kind of other lees kinds of things. But this one really does show the oak quite a bit. So
what's the vintage on that?
2015.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of both, you get the leesy element and definitely the oak shows. So I'd have to say it would be something that I would like, got to watch out for that, because at least my wife is not a big oak fan, in especially in whites, and so we got to be careful with those.
Yeah, definitely.
Very nicely done.
More of a food wine though than just a porch pounder.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Cool. Anybody else? I see Steph Schwab down there drinking, so that was a raised glass. I'm gonna let you. Let me unmute you. You have to unmute yourself, Steph.
She's ignoring you.
Way of evading.
I think she is ignoring me.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay, thanks, Lori.
So I have I'm going to mess up the name also, but Albarino de
Stefanianis.
And this is a new producer for me. So I did a little research on them a little bit, and the person who designed the label designs jets. So that, I don't know exactly how you go from designing a jet and jewelry to a wine label, but I think that's awesome. But this is a brilliant wine. It is crisp. It is acidic. When you get it on your palate, on your tongue, you just salivate over and over again. Very, very citrus, very, lemon, lime. The stone fruit is there, and the salinity isn't there at the beginning and then creeps up, and there it is. And I mean, I love salinity. I love acidity in the wine. I'm a huge acid head, but it's really interesting how the salinity isn't there at the beginning and then just powers through to carry on to the finish that just keeps going and going and going.
That's fun. I love that. Fefianis was one of my very first Albariños that I ever had, and have always been one of my favorite go-tos. I love it. Love them. All right, who's next? And if Court, I was going to call on you anyways.
Well, I'm tasting the same wine as you did, but it's one of my favorites. I'm doing the Gran Bazan Etiqueta Ambar, which I've only ever had the Etiqueta Verde before, which is one of my favorites. I always buy it, so I was excited to get to try this. And I think the additional lees aging does add a little bit of complexity to it, but I love the texture of this wine. I mean, it's from the Salnes Valley, so it's right on the sea there, and you really get that like feeling of sea spray, which I appreciate. And as a person who Albariño was the first wine I ever really learned about, like before Sauvignon Blanc, before Pinot Grigio, anything. It's a very classic and nostalgic example, I think.
That's awesome. Thanks, Court. All right, who's next? If I don't get a volunteer, I'm calling. And because Emma's, okay, great, Randy, go ahead.
I've got the Tarascada. Let me get that up there for you. It's really nice. It's really complex. And one of the things about Albariño that I'm not gravitated usually toward Albariño because a lot of them are pretty simple and flowery. And this one is more fruity. It brings the fruit right up front, a lot of lemon, orange peel, but it's also got like a lanolin kind of a thing, some apricot in there. So it's pretty complex. And there's a really nice salinity that goes along with the acidity, which is also superb. It's an awesome wine. 3 months on the lees since we were talking about that. Oh, and it's Au Rosal.
Yeah.
What's the vintage on that, Randy?
2018.
Okay.
And
Tricia?
I'm going to jump in just, so this is a blend, of course. So it's got the Caña
Yes.
Blanco and the Lodero as
Right.
well. And being from Au Rosal, it's a little riper. So yeah, I get that. It's just it's a bigger wine. To sort of more oily fishes, maybe even the chicken. So
I had it
Oily
earlier
beautiful
today
wine.
with
You're back, Trish.
asparagus,
I'll tell
some
you.
roasted asparagus. It was
Yeah.
nice with that.
Just speaking of food, I noticed Courtney was talking about percebes. So you really like percebes? Really?
You're on mute. You're
I
on
can't
mute,
hear you,
Court.
Courtney.
But she loves it.
No, but I could tell she was definitively in love.
Okay, so people have said, I've heard people say, like, once you eat one, you like can't stop. Well, I haven't brought myself to eat one yet.
Oh no, you should.
So what are percebes?
They're the best. They're so good.
Let me see.
Oh, they're really, really pretty.
They're food particles, which sounds really gross and they look really weird, but they taste like very much like the sea to me. Like almost if you like raw oysters, you might like percebes.
Not persimmons, percebes.
Yes.
Very different.
Wait, I replied a cat. Why did I reply to cat? I meant to put it on the chat. Anyway.
All right, here are the percebes, guys.
Yay!
Wow.
Yeah,
Same
exactly. Aren't
Wow.
those look delicious? Don't you just want to pop one of those in your mouth?
I'm
They
very
look like
curious.
fingers.
But I will say though, I mean, these are one of the hardest types of seafood for them to actually harvest. because they grow on the rocks, and these guys get all bundled up, and the waves come crashing in when they're trying to pull them off the rock. I was watching, I don't know if any of you guys have seen the Jose Andres Made in Spain. He did 2 series of videos, and if you haven't, they're absolutely phenomenal. He's hilarious to watch. And he goes out one day and he harvests the percebes with these guys. And I tried them like 20 years ago, and I didn't care for it, but I would try it again.
Are they
Just
shellfish?
you never know.
You
And
tried them in that long?
what's that?
You haven't tried them in that long?
No, I haven't had much of an occasion. When we were in Rias Baixas, we were eating all this amazing,
Pill.
well, but the thing is there's just so much there's so many great seafoods that I know that I really like and devour that, because percebes weren't on the platter, I wasn't gonna go out of my way. All right, let's do one last one.
When we make our pilgrimage, we'll all try them.
There we go. When we get to Camino de Santiago Court.
Yeah, you got to walk the whole, and then you can reward yourself with some percebes.
I'll reward myself with a lot more than that.
Christy, do you have a little Albarino drinker there? You're on mute.
Yeah, he's had
Hi.
That's awesome.
My husband's been hanging in. I think my husband's gonna be the Albarino drinker tonight. He's gonna. He gets the rest of the bottle.
I think a lot of us are drinking a little bit more frequently and enjoying some really nice stuff these days. And it's one of the positive things of what we're going through. So.
Yeah. So I know we're at the 6:30 mark. So if you have to go, we understand. If you still have some questions that haven't been answered, please go ahead. And yeah, it's been a very fun, guys.
It has been
Great.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
I don't want the interaction to end.
How
I'm
many-
gonna go downstairs and
how
hang out
many-
with my husband, who I've been hanging out with for the past 3 weeks.
How many people have been to Rias Baixas? All right. How many people want to go to Rias?
Oh yeah.
Now? Can we go now?
All right,
Yeah.
everybody on this chat.
Hey, that actually brings up a really good point. So I would be on the plane with you guys the first, landing foot in Rias Baixas in the flash if I could. But one of the things that the DO did want us to convey to you guys, because there's still, there's a lot of question, with the corona and what's going on and everybody's at home, what's happening. And the reality is that, the agricultural industry is one of those industries that is still moving forward.
Oh, sure.
I know it's true in California here. Tasting rooms are closed and you can't go visit tasting rooms, but the vines are being tended to, the production's happening in the facilities. And all I can see is that once we get through this mess that we're all in, that we are going to enjoy some absolutely spectacular 2019 and soon to be 2020 wines. So, I think that, it's been really fun to have everybody on here. And I think it's a blast to, it's funny how these circumstances have forced us to do something like this, but I think that this is going to be a fairly, a little bit more common type of a thing. For people.
I like this. I really do.
so.
It's informative and, okay, yeah, we just see pictures and we can't like hug and sit there and taste together,
But you don't have to call an Uber to go home either.
You can drink the whole bottle.
but it takes me 2.5 hours.
Yep.
So I'm really happy about that. And I don't have to spit.
Very true.
What's spitting?
So,
Cool.
Can I go back and just ask like a technical question? I just was curious, how high are those pergolas? Because I'm thinking as a winemaker, who's in the vineyard, like if I'm doing this all the time to harvest, I'm dying. Like,
Think of those muscles you'll be getting, Lori.
They typically sit about 5 to 7 feet above the ground.
okay.
And so, we went, it's still, this is it. Think about it though. Think about how backbreaking work, harvesting is anyways. And think
bending
about
over.
when you're either bunt they're actually not as bad because when we were in Rias, Baixas, one of the very first stop that we did, they kind of let us do that. And so they stand on crates. Now, you know, Kat, I think we put her on our shoulders, but they stand on crates and you're really close to the canopy. So you're really kind of like this. It's not more like this. So, you know, there's a lot of, and then you've got they hang a bucket on the wires that are under the pergola system, and they just clip them into, you know, put them into the bucket. So it is painful work. You know, that's why hand harvesting. And I think that what's amazing is when you can get wines like this for 20.
No, it's frozen.
But
Yeah, Rick's speaking from experience. He did it for about 5 minutes. And you should have seen him whining. Oh my God, this is so hard.
It's 4 minutes
I've
longer
had
than Trish was
enough.
doing it. So Trish was too busy eating grapes off the vine. So
Harvesting is never pleasant. Like, let's be honest.
Well, that's true. It's a little tough. It's a little cold at, you know, 3 a.m. But I guess the positive also is that the fruit is hanging lower, so it's easier they can probably harvest faster because they don't have to deal with the leaves that are in.
And they do, I mean, they do, you know, clip during the growing season. They do clip back, you know, the leaves. And I mean, to Kat's point earlier, one of the biggest things is that even though the fruit is hanging, it's getting a lot of air circulation, so it's not getting the potential effects of mildew from that really rainy, you know, cold, damp.
Do they have a lot of disease pressure?
They can because it's so cold and wet. I mean, powdery mildew and downy mildew are always problems. And even like to Kat's point, she talked about botrytis a little bit. So.
Well, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you all very much.
Empty.
Yeah.
Empty.
Oh.